Welcome back to the JumpifyLabs Podcast, the show for founders who want growth without the guesswork. Here we talk about the systems driving predictable growth, and today's guest has spent decades building and leading high-performance teams in some of the most demanding environments imaginable, including U.S. Navy submarines. And today he's helping engineers and technical founders step confidently into leadership roles. John Carter, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for the invite. I look forward to the conversation.
The pleasure's all mine, John. Let's kick things off. You were in the military, you were in the Navy, like myself. How do you feel like your time in the Navy shaped how you think about teams today?
Wow, what a great question. So I served for 30 years. As you mentioned, I commanded submarines and commanded squadrons of submarines, which means I mentored and trained nuclear submarine captains as well. Learned a lot, tremendous amount, deep portfolio in high-performing team development, as you can imagine, right? Submarines typically have anywhere from 140 to 160, 170 personnel of all walks and sources, disciplines, skill sets, and to bring those together for a highly focused mission for prolonged periods of time. And we take these platforms into harm's way for prolonged periods of time. So lead performance is definitely a keystone of being able to do that. So what did I learn? Wow, this podcast probably isn't long enough to share all of that, but I think it all turns, it all boils down to trust in being able to rely on your shipmate to do their job at a very high level, but recognizing that we're all human and that people do make mistakes on the teams, right? And we're all trained well enough to identify what our teammates should be doing. And if they don't, we provide backup to them to ensure that that human mistake doesn't work its way beyond the occurrence of the mistake. So it's immediately corrected, and the team does not allow that individual to fail. And so there's a very high level of trusting each other with each other's lives that makes that team very high performing.
Yeah, my time with the military, you get exposed to really strong leadership and then mediocre leadership. I mean, you go through so many different people because everyone churns. It's just part of the military, right? But I always say, like, the military definitely, our saying is accelerate your life. I don't know if that's still the military saying or the saying for the Navy. That's still, it was at one point, accelerate.
I don't think I don't know. They change it up every 2 to 3 years. There's no telling what it is nowadays.
I will say that it definitely felt like it accelerated my ability to be part of a team. And also when you get into leadership roles, it definitely does accelerate that. But let's get back to the conversation. You're focused mainly on helping engineers and the technical workers to be successful in the leadership levels. Why do you feel that engineers tend to rise quickly, but then also struggle when they get to that role when they are leading other people?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. It's a very good question and kind of forms the nexus of what my coaching business is all about. So after I transitioned from the military, I founded a company called CoreX. And so what I do there is I perform or partner with engineer, typically, but not always, executives with engineering technical backgrounds that now have leadership roles high within their organizations, which is a different skill set, right? We can all be very good engineers and understand how the technology works that you're bringing to market, but then to develop the high performing teams to communicate your vision, your strategy to your teams, and then to delegate those tasks down to your teams, and then the follow up with them to provide accountability and reinforce authorities down the chain of command is super important to making the business successful. So I partner with these executives, do one-on-one coaching or one-to-many, oftentimes with their direct reports. So we do workshops and assessments and a bunch of other skill building things to round out the company's ability to perform at a very high level. So I think back to your question is, how do you make these engineers well-rounded leaders, right? And I've always been a firm advocate that you can't, and I think this is what a lot of people try to do. They maybe recognize that they have some leveling up to do, some growth in that space. And so they go get a leadership book off the shelf and they go read a leadership book. They've read a chapter, they put it down, and then they go to work and they think they're a better leader as a result of that. That very, very seldom is the case, right? Leadership is a team sport. Right? It can't be read about and then you automatically become a better leader. It is a team sport. It's an active sport. It's a sport that requires more than one individual to engage with the team and the team to engage with that quote unquote leader. And by the way, my personal philosophy is there isn't just one leader. Everyone on the team is a leader, and they assume leadership roles at different levels within the organization. So everyone is the leader, right? And so one of the things I bring to the organization when I coach the executive is I get them to change that mindset about the roles their people play, the importance and the value of people in their organization, and then what roles they should have to bring about that value to the marketplace. Divesting of a very centralized authoritarian way of doing business top down often falls apart at some point during the business's growth, because one person can't do it all. And so you have to trust those below you to execute on those delegated tasks, right? So how do you do that effectively and still get the high quality that you require for the folks that you've entrusted with these delegated tasks? A lot of work goes into doing that when I coach. So why engineers? I myself am a professionally licensed engineer, and obviously, as you might guess, submarines is a highly technical profession. And so I bring that deep portfolio of knowledge and technology and engineering to my coaching practice. So I connect very well with those type of entities that are in the technology area. But we all know folks that are brilliant minds, but oftentimes they struggle a bit connecting with the human aspect of motivating folks, creating teams, and creating that organizational culture that is super positive. People love to work there, and they create value in bringing that product to the market in a very positive sense, in a very positive cultural sense. Typically, I work well with the engineers because I understand both sides of that struggle. I understand what it is they're trying to do from a technical standpoint, but I also understand the people that are actually doing the day-to-day work and why they matter most to the organization. And if I can help the executive leadership do that translation and then over time become better leaders as a result of that, that is really a powerful thing for those entities to transform in that way.
John, when you first start a new client engagement, what does your process look like? Do you have a framework that you follow? As in, first we're analyzing step one, we're doing this, step two, we're doing that. Or is it different for everyone you're working with?
It is slightly, that's a great question. It is slightly different. It depends on the need of the client. Every client has a slightly different pain point, slightly different need. But generally speaking, they all start in a similar way. I try to create a baseline and do an assessment with the principal that has brought me on. So we do DISC assessments, we do 360s, so that the principal understands how they communicate to others around them, how they make decisions on a day-to-day basis. And perhaps we even provide that assessment to other direct reports around the CEO or the founder to help the CEO or founder understand the people that he works directly with or she works directly with, how they make decisions and how they communicate. We all know that people communicate in different ways. We all make decisions in different ways. And if we understand how we're different, we oftentimes can connect at a deeper level in creating that deeper teaming relationship. So that's typically where it starts. Once we have the DISC assessment fully outbriefed, then we have a much deeper understanding where the client wants to go with the business, what are their gaps, what are their pain points, and then I custom tailor with that principal their coaching program to get them to that next level that they see themselves at. That oftentimes is something that is done on a weekly basis. We coach weekly for about an hour a week. Sometimes that's a bit too much for the client. We'll do 1 every 2 weeks, 1 hour every 2 weeks. But then for 60 days, 90 days, 6 months initially, and then we'll see where things go, and they may extend beyond that oftentimes.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of transformations are your clients enjoying once they get through these little sprints? Let's say 3 months, 6 months. What are, I guess, the milestones that you start to observe? What changes?
Right. Yeah. No, yeah. Thanks for that question. Oftentimes, depending on where they're at in the business evolution, right? Oftentimes it's about clarity in creating mission focus and prioritization, restoring some sanity to the founders or CEOs, work-life balance. Oftentimes I find my clients, when they start, are working excessive hours a week, 60, 70 hours a week, not sustainable. and they're making all the decisions themselves. Oftentimes they're relitigating decisions multiple times, and their traction, right, in moving forward and adjudicating decisions is impaired. And so we provide clarity, improve the effectiveness, give them an operating system where the team supports the principal understands the strengths and weaknesses in his team. He works to mitigate the weaknesses and amplify the strengths, and invests in bringing everybody to a higher level. That results then in growth in sales. Then the pinnacle of that approach obviously is to work on the leadership in the organization and to establish the right culture. So those are the benefits that a client typically sees. Those things aren't done overnight. They don't see those in 1 week. But over several months, 3 to 4 or 5 months, definitely over a year, they will see a highly effective operating system in place. The CEO now is working, balanced hours at a very high level. He has a team that supports the vision. They understand the vision. They are able to communicate at a much higher level in supporting each other and providing that watch team backup that we talked about earlier. So yeah, what does all that mean? Yeah, you get for the investment, you get a lot of return because you're a lot more effective in the time that you spend on something, that you're actually getting it done, right? And that what we typically see, but that results in growth and then revenue improvements at the back end.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so John, you've been in leadership roles for a very long time. You went to the military, of course. Now you're leading leaders and helping them evolve. I'm curious what I'm curious if there's any challenges that leaders are facing now that maybe didn't exist 5 years ago. Like you were in the military however long ago. I'm sure you still have colleagues that are telling you, "Oh, it's a different Navy now." Like, what are some things that you're hearing or that you're actually personally observing that's new today that maybe we're still figuring out how to solve?
Yeah, there's a lot of new challenges out there that I never had to deal with. And 5 years ago, that seems like a short time ago, but it's actually in the lifetime of some of the technologies we've developed since then, it is a long time. These problems weren't as prominent now as they were back then. Let me give you an example. AI. A lot of companies struggle with, how do I implement AI to be most effective for my business model? That is a different answer for different entities in different organizations and different teams. And everyone feels the urge to implement the AI because they feel like their competitors are implementing AI. And if I don't, then I'll be left out of the game. That's a challenge, right? Because it's a distractor. If not done properly, it can actually add burden and churn to the operating system within the organization, where they become less effective because there aren't clear lines of responsibility. Here's what the AI is doing. Here's what our protocols are. Here's what the human will continue to do. There's no guardrails, and so they're piling this stuff on and creating more, in effect, problems than it solves. So you layer that on top. The workforce is very different. Second issue, right? Workforce is very different than it was 10, 15 years ago. Folks are coming out of college. They have different expectations. They stay with jobs different lengths of time. My father, my grandfather, they were used to, coming out of college, serving, coming out of college, then going into a company and working at the company for 30 years and working their way up through that ladder at the company. That's no longer the model, right? Folks are typically at a company for 2 or 3 years, and then they're going to a competitor potentially, right? And so how do you manage that workforce in terms of investing in them and getting them to stay long term? And how do you create a legacy for your company when you're constantly dealing with this turnover, right? And you've often probably heard that it's hard for me to get interested in investing in my employees when I know they're only going to be there for 3 years possibly. That's a lost investment. I tend to think of it the other way around, where if you do invest in them, by the way, very few employers do to the right level and effectiveness. If you do that right, people will want to stay. Not to say they'll stay for 30 years, but you're more likely to hang on to them and they'll enjoy working for your company with the right culture because they feel that they are valued. They feel their contributions make an impact and that the company is investing in them personally to make them better at what they do. Those are self-sustaining models that are difficult to follow through on nowadays, more so than they were 10, 15 years ago, I think.
Yeah, definitely right. It is one of those things where it seems like Me personally, the longest time I've ever spent with any one organization was the military. I did 6 years, and after that, it was all stints of 2 years or less, like progressively going through. Very interesting. All right. So, John, right now, currently with your business, you're quite selective with your clients. Who is the ideal client that you would want to work with that should probably reach out if they're listening to this?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for asking it. Wow. I have actually coached clients from all verticals and sizes, quite frankly. For me, it's about impact. And if I think I can make an impact, I've done small local businesses. I've done larger businesses, probably on the order of 100 million in annual revenue in different verticals. I have folks that do nonprofit veteran support, and I've done folks that build satellites for launch, low Earth orbit launch. So, and everything in between. So it comes in different shapes and sizes. But I will tell you, my ideal client, typically, how folks typically get gravitated to me is they are in an engineering or technology field where the founder or the CEO feels like he needs a trusting partner that understands the technology space, but then is scaling. He's at an inflection, or she's an inflection point, or in a transition in the business, i.e., they're scaling rapidly. Perhaps they're looking for Series A funding. They're hiring aggressively. The CEO founder is in that space now where he is, because they're hiring, he's developing brand new people, brand new teams, and he's trying to understand how to best organize that controlled chaos, to delegate those responsibilities from what he has always known to be his domain or her domain, right? And so now he's trying to push that off to other people and still feel comfortable doing that while they're trying to get the assets and the money to execute on the growth, get the customers lined up with the contracts to get the product out the door. And so there's a lot of things going on in the technology space. A lot of exciting things. For instance, a lot of clients in AI, exploding, space, aerospace, energy, particularly in nuclear, robotics, huge for me in terms of clients that I work with. So those are typically their pain points and portions of their business growth phase that I help them out with.
And John, if somebody's listening and they hear you talk and they're thinking, that's exactly me, what's the process for them to reach out and have a conversation?
Well, they can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, John B. Carter, PhD, PE. I'm right there. They can also go to my website. It's corexdx.com. They can look me up there. They can reach out. Website, LinkedIn. Those are good places to reach out. You can direct message me through either one of those. There's a link on my website where you can actually tell me about your problem, and I will engage through the website, and then we can start a conversation. By the way, there's no commitment for folks that reach out to me. I'm not looking to get married with a client right away, right? It's a vetting process. I vet the client as much as they vet me, and I'm happy to have 2 or 3 or 4 conversations early on just to feel each other out, understand the problem, and validate that we're a good fit and that I'm a good fit to solve their pain point. So there's a journey involved before we decide on any sort of arrangement. And by the way, that initial arrangement is typically a short-term thing. It can be a 60-day kind of sprint to get things going. And then at 60 days, we evaluate where we want to take things next. So, you date before you get married. And so I take the same approach.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, John. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience, your background. It's always good to talk with a fellow sailor. And if you're listening to this and you feel like the urge to call out to John to find his resources, actually his number is on the very top of his website anyways. His website is corexdx. That's the word core and then the letters xdx.com. And if you like stories like this to hear from other leaders like John, be sure to tune in to Jumpify Labs Podcast for more. My name is Jay. Thanks so much.